Good evening. I call the November 19th, 2025 Apple Valley Planning Commission meeting to order. The first item of business is the approval of the agenda. Any changes from staff?
No, not tonight.
Thank you, Terry. Any changes from the commissioner?
Move approval. Second.
Motion or approval made by Commissioner Schindler, seconded by Commissioner Scanlon. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The next, first item of business is the approval of the agenda. I got that. Fun. I'm here. Next item of business is the approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda items are considered routine and will be enacted with a single motion without discussion unless a commissioner or a citizen requests to have any item separately considered. It will then be moved to the regular agenda for consideration. Can I get a motion of approval?
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by Commissioner Scanlon, seconded by Commissioner Sandall. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. That carries. First item we have to discuss tonight is we have two public hearings. The first one is the Christchurch sign setback variance, and that is presented by Sydney. But first, we're going to open the public hearing. We will now open this public hearing for agenda item 4A. The affidavit of publication for the notice of public hearing is available for inspection in the planning department. Everyone wishing to speak at this public hearing should be sure to fill out the attendance roster. Include your name and address so that accurate records can be maintained. We will begin the procedure with a brief presentation by city staff, followed by a presentation by the petitioner of the hearing. Upon the conclusion of the presentation, city staff will be asked to comment on the proposal's conformance with pertinent regulations and policies. After that, comments will be taken from the general public.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Tonight, I'll be presenting to you a request from Christchurch for a sign setback variance. Specifically, you are asked to consider a variance to reduce the ground sign setback from 13 feet to 8 feet, which would be a 5-foot variance, for the installation of a new sign in the same location as the existing ground sign at Christchurch. The site is located at the southwest corner of Johnny Cake Ridge Road and McAndrews Road, which is, again, the existing site of Christchurch. The property is zoned P institutional, which in the institutional zoning district, each property is allowed one ground sign. The sign location of the current sign is located here in red, and then in the red line shows a storm utility pipe. The dashed line shows a 40-foot wide drainage and utility pipe, drainage and utility easement. The original sign was permitted in 1994. That sign permit we have a site plan that shows that sign located 20 feet from the property line, which is the bold black line adjacent to Johnny Cake Ridge Road. Again, that sign was shown 20 feet away from the property line. It was then installed, and the applicant has come back to apply for a new sign permit for a new ground sign to replace this. And they realized with staff that this previous sign was installed in the wrong location than what was permitted in 1994, and realized that the existing location would need a variance for that because it was installed in the wrong location and did not meet the required 13-foot setback. So they would like to request a variance in order to put the sign in the same location as the previous sign. They would like to use the existing sign foundation, sign base, and just put in a new sign structure. So on the left-hand side, we have a image of the existing sign, which was again permitted in 1994, and then this is a rendering of the new proposed sign, which would use the same base, same footings. Again, part of their sign plan package that was submitted showing the new sign overlaid over the previous or the existing sign, which is currently there. Currently, the sign is 8 feet away. The new sign would be a little bit more narrow and slightly further. Again, they're just requesting that 8-foot variance. another graphic of the new sign. This new sign meets all other sign requirements. It's just the setback that they're looking for the variance. When considering variances in general, we review the zoning chapter for the administration of variances. With sign variances, there are some extra requirements that we look to. So in regard to this request, staff considered 7 requirements pertaining to variances. I'll go through them quickly. If there's any questions on a specific one, we can go over it. So first we look at if there's special conditions that exist to the property. Secondly, the special circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. 3, a literal interpretation of the provisions of the code would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties. 4, the variance would not confer on the applicant any special privileges. 5, the use of the property shall not have an appearance that will, or shall have an appearance that will not have an adverse effect on other neighboring properties. 6, the variance is necessary to alleviate practical difficulties. And then 7, it is the minimum variance necessary. Staff has drafted some findings that are suggested to the commission to recommend approval of. Again, I'll go over these quickly. If there's any questions on a specific finding, I'd be happy to go over them more in depth. So a general summary of the findings are that a storm utility pipe is located 25 feet from the eastern property line, and with that there's a corresponding 40-foot wide drainage and utility easement along Johnny Cake Ridge Road. The location of the pipe and the easement are uncommon. Most properties don't have that large of an easement, especially on where someone would like to put a sign to identify their property. And the special conditions are not because of the applicant. It was there before the sign was installed. The properties in the institutional zoning district, again, are allowed 1 sign with a minimum setback of 13 feet. The applicant proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner. Ground signs are typically located adjacent to right-of-way as a means of identification. A literal interpretation of these provisions would require placing the ground sign over 25 feet back because of that storm utility pipe. The proposed sign is replacing an existing sign that has been in place for over 30 years. The sign will have little visual or physical change to the surrounding area, so it should have no impacts on the neighbors. Again, the sign should not be placed on top of the storm utility pipe. Staff would not recommend that, so the variance is the minimum necessary in regard to that location of the storm pipe. Draft conditions have also been suggested to the commission. I'll go through those quickly. 1, the sign permit fee should be needs to be issued within 1 year of the approval of the variance, otherwise the variance would lapse. An electrical permit needs to be applied for and approved of prior to installation. An encroachment agreement will be executed, approved, and recorded prior to approval of the sign permit, which would be an agreement to allow the sign within the city's easement. 4, utilities need to be located prior to installing a sign. And then 5, the installation of the sign needs to be consistent with the plans that were within the packet given to you and with the issued sign permit. With that, you're asked to hold the public hearing, receive comments, and then close the public hearing. If there are no outstanding comments or questions and the Planning Commission concurs, staff does recommend approval of the 5-foot setback variance based on the suggested findings 1 through 7 and the conditions 1 through 5. And with that, we do have the applicant here tonight, so I'll take any questions, and if you have anything for them, they're here as well.
Sure. Thanks, Sydney. Any discussions? Any questions for Sydney? No? Okay. Any discussions for the applicant to come up? Anybody want questions with him? No. So therefore, we will move along. Yep. So at this point, I will let the, please come to the podium to speak and address all comments and questions to the chair. If there are anybody who would like to come up to speak on this one? No one? Miss just walking in, did you have any questions for this particular public hearing? Okay. Okay. Then let's go ahead and make a motion. Close. There are no further comments. I will close this public hearing. It is the policy of the Planning Commission not to act on an item on the same night at the public hearing. The Planning Commission will weigh all comments and information received tonight in its deliberations at future meetings. This item will continue to appear on future Planning Commission agendas until a recommendation on the petition can be forwarded to the City Council unless somebody would like to make a motion tonight.
Madam Chair, I recommend approval of a 5-foot setback variance for the ground sign at Christ Church located at 12925 Johnny Cake Ridge Road, based on the findings listed in Exhibit A in the following conditions 1 through 5 as outlined in the staff report.
Motion made by Commissioner Scanlon, seconded by Commissioner Sandal. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thanks, Sydney. Moving on is our next public hearing, and this will be the FRASER First Edition Comprehensive Plan Amendments. And first, I will open this public hearing. We will now open the public hearing for agenda item 4B. The affidavit of publication for the notice of public hearing is available for inspection in the Planning Department. Everyone wishing to speak at this public hearing should be sure to fill out the attendance roster, include your name and address so that accurate records can be maintained. We will begin the procedure with a brief presentation by city staff, followed by a presentation by the petitioner of the hearing. Upon the conclusion of the presentation, city staff will be asked to comment on their proposals' conformance with pertinent regulations and policies. After that, comments will be taken from the general public. Sydney?
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners again. So the next item for tonight would be a city-initiated comprehensive plan amendment regarding property in FRASER First Edition. Specifically, you're asked to consider an amendment to the 2040 Comprehensive Plan land use map to designate just over 2 acres of property from high-density residential to commercial, and then designating just over 1 acre of property from suburban intensive high-density residential, again, to commercial. The site is located at the northwest corner of 147th Street West and County Road 42. This is FRASER First Edition with Lot 1 to the north. That's the existing site of FRASER Living Facility, which is also known as Apple Grove Court. The Lot 2 to the south is a vacant city-owned property, which is currently under purchase agreement with Northland Real Estate Group. That purchase agreement was approved by the City Council with the intent to develop the site as a limited business use. For tonight, there is no development proposal. The city is just doing housekeeping item to redesignate land in the comprehensive plan from high-density residential, suburban intensive high-density residential to commercial to align with the zoning, which I'll go over in the next slides. The existing land use is shown on the left-hand side. So Lot 1 to the north, the FRASER lot, is currently high-density residential. Lot 2 to the south, the city-owned lot, is currently suburban intensive high-density residential. And then what is being proposed by the city is to amend these two properties to commercial. These two properties were originally guided for commercial. Both properties were updated in the 2030 comp plan update to high density. And then this vacant city property to the south was then further updated to suburban intensive high density in the 2040 comp plan update. Both properties are currently zoned limited business. It is a state statute requirement as well as a best practice to have zoning match land use. So currently the existing land use, the existing land use of high density residential and suburban intensive residential does not match the commercial zoning of limited business. So there's no change in uses. What's currently allowed in the limited business zoning district, which is general office, medical, daycare, bank, that is currently allowed and that is not changing. What's changing is the overall land guidance designation to come into conformance with that zoning. The FRASER property to the north, that was approved under the limited business zoning district as well. So that use and the conditional use permit that they were granted in 1999 is allowed under the LB district, and it's not going to be impacted by this amendment. Staff did reach out to FRASER. There were no comments received, so I would assume they don't have any issues with the amendment. The 2040 comprehensive plan lays out a couple of guidelines and general practices related to the commercial land designation as well as the limited business zoning designation. So I'll go over those quickly. The city uses the zoning ordinance to regulate the intensity and characteristics of development. Lower intensity business districts do include the limited business and neighborhood commercial zoning districts. Higher intensity districts would be a district like retail business, which is over-the-counter sales. The limited business designation is reserved for general offices and businesses that exclude retail. Business operations usually occur within an enclosed building and are generally limited to weekdays. LB uses are located adjacent to the retail core of downtown and may act as a transition to residential neighborhoods. Significant traffic attracted by the site development shall be generally limited to the morning and evening peak hours with modest levels of off-peak activity, and weekend traffic impacts would be minimal. We had our engineering department model some traffic impacts. So Apple Grove Court is the FRASER property. There would be no impact changes to that because, again, the use isn't changing. What is modeled and shown as a difference, there's going to be a difference in traffic no matter what when the vacant lot develops, which it is intended to develop in the future. Currently, under the guiding of a multifamily property, it would have a total daily trip of 378 uses modeled. With guiding towards a more office use, something like medical or dental office, it would have daily trips as 511. So that would be a modeled increase of 133 for traffic. For utilities, I'm not going to be able to explain this table very well to you, so if you have any questions, I would switch over to engineering, but I can say that from the comprehensive plan guiding of high-density residential down to office, there's a 85% reduction in the use of our utilities. And engineering had no concerns with those, with either the traffic or the utility impact. And again, this isn't a change. This is what has already been modeled with the LB zoning district. So with that, you are asked to hold the public hearing, receive comments, and then close the public hearing. For tonight, we're just asking to receive questions from you and the public. We are not recommending an action tonight if you so choose to go forward with that. And then I also just want to note that I did provide 3 public comments to you all that were received yesterday through email. So if you had time to read those. And then with that, I will give it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Sydney. Commissioners, questions for Sydney? Commissioner Scanlon?
Thank you, Sydney. Couple of questions just for some clarification. The way it's currently zoned, I could foresee that there would be additional trips or traffic involved over and above what a business would be, based on the number of residents that would be there?
Commissioner Scanlon, are you asking about the change from high density to LB? Or to commercial?
Well, if it were to stay like it currently is, it wouldn't change. I would suspect that we might see additional traffic involved with that, with multiple tenants in a residential type setting versus what's being proposed to go to a commercial, like, for an example, like a dentist office or office, which you may be dealing with 1 or 2 tenants at the possibly the most, with being able to have adequate parking and then the size of the building based on the restraints of the lot.
Commissioner Scanlon, based on what traffic is modeled, a office use actually has more daily trips than what a residential use has. But like I would just want to reiterate that high density isn't currently allowed to go there because it's not zoned for that. It would need to rezone from LB to high density, and because of the existing site conditions, the city's vision, as well as the zoning requirements, it's unlikely that a high-density residential use could really fit there. So it's a better practice to keep it as commercial.
Okay, thank you. That helps and clarifies that. There was one comment that the ponding to the west, I think that is, if I got my directions correct, that's for water runoff or the purpose of that?
Commissioner Scanlon, the pond to the west is a regional area storm water pond.
Right.
Correct. Okay.
And I'm assuming that's been there for a period of time. With the change in the zoning and so forth, is there going to have to be any modifications or anything done to that? Have you gotten that far down the road?
So because this is just a comprehensive plan amendment and there's no development
Right.
brought forward, that hasn't necessarily been considered. But stormwater is always considered with new development as it comes forward. So whenever this vacant lot 2 does develop, that would have to go through the formal, full city review process, which would include going to a public meeting in front of the planning commission again, and then going to city council for formal consideration.
Okay, I'm just trying to bring a couple points up that some of the letters that we had received had talked about, and maybe lessening some of the concerns there and the purpose of that pond. And there's nothing with lot 1 that's changing, that's going to be retained in its current configuration. And
Yes, that's correct. There's no proposed changes to Lot 1. Again, we reached out to FRASER, no comments, and the change would still fit with what's currently there because it is allowed under the LB use.
correct. And just to reiterate that the lot 2, there is no retail going to be looked at for that. That is the way it's going to be zoned. Is it's not for retail. We're looking at more for an office type
Correct. The city council.
business setting.
Yep, correct. The city council approved the purchase agreement with the understanding that it would be developed as a limited business use, which is office. Again, that's our least intense business use in the city. If a developer wanted to come forward and propose a retail use, they would have to go through the rezoning process to rezone it to something like the RB zoning district, which would include a public hearing process where the public could come again and voice concerns with that, if that were to come forward with that rezoning.
Thanks for your clarification. That helps out, I think, a little bit.
So truthfully, I mean, this would be the best option for like the residents that are north of this area. I mean, is to have not high density, but to have a LB of a dentist office or something like that, I would think. Anybody else? Questions? No one? Okay, at this point then, I will ask if there's anybody in the audience that would like to come up. Please come to the podium to speak and address all comments and questions to the chairs, and please present your name and address when you come up. Anyone? Don't be shy. Usually takes that first one to come up.
My name is Dr. Angie Lauer-Sheppy. I live on 260 Streets Avenue, so just down 42. I take this corner a lot on my way to Starbucks, on the way to work, or on the way home from Starbucks after work. I have 2 little kids, so we are really excited about the Parks Project and everything like that. I think my question is, I'm still trying to understand zoning and properties, right? That's not my expertise at all. It's not what my doctorate is in. I understand that there's not a development proposition, so I thank you all for clarifying that. I'm wondering if, like, what does it look like, or what would it mean if we left it as is and we just had maybe some more nature preserve or expanded the pond, or I don't know what that would look like. My understanding is this happened a long time ago where it was zoned to be more of that commercial, and I do like to hear that it's an LB, the limited business, rather than commercial. We don't need any more chicken places, so I'm just kind of wondering thoughts or maybe just some education for me about what that would look like or what that would mean, if that makes sense.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cindy, do you want to address that?
So this site was in our comprehensive plan, it was targeted as within the phase development map as a developing by 2030. So it was never intended to sit vacant. The property was originally subdivided by FRASER, and then we sold, I could probably provide a better history at the next meeting, but I believe we sold the north half to FRASER, and then it was intended that they would buy it in the future to expand. When the city went out for the RFP process for this property, or when a developer came forward interested in the property, we did reach out to FRASER, and they did not have interest in buying that land. So their plans changed. But again, it's always been limited business, and it's always intended to be that lower intensity use, which FRASER would be. FRASER is. If they expanded, that would also be a lower intensity use. So there's never been an intent to leave it vacant permanently.
Okay,
That's helpful, thank you.
thank you. Anyone else? Going once, going twice. Okay, I will close this hearing. If there are no further comments, I will close this public hearing. It is the policy of the Planning Commission not to act on an item on the same night as its public hearing. The Planning Commission will weigh all comments and information received tonight in its deliberations at future meetings. This item will continue to appear on future Planning Commission agendas until a recommendation on the petition can be forwarded to the City Council. Thank you. Land use and action items, there is none tonight, so that will bring us to Terry for other business.
So the upcoming meetings, there's planning commission meetings scheduled for December 3rd and the 17th, and then the council meetings are scheduled for November 25th and December 11th. And there are no other updates tonight.
Thank you, Terry. Motion to adjourn? Made by Commissioner Scanlon, seconded by Commissioner Halas. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. This meeting has adjourned.